Hey BookTube, let's talk about books from July. I'm Jen and I talk about audiobooks, and I thought I would just go over some of the books that I read in July, kind of wrap them up, tell you about what they were. I'll start off with the duology, The Islands at the End of the World and The Girl at the Center of the World. These are by Aslan and they are narrated by Allyson Ryan. The narration by Allyson Ryan was really good. I thought that she did a great job of voicing the main character. It's told from a young girl's point of view. She lives on the big island of Hawaii, and she has epilepsy, and she has been selected to be part of an experimental treatment for that. So she and her dad fly to Honolulu, and while they are there, an EMP goes off, and so she and her dad have to get home. So this first book, The Islands at the End of the World, are all about how an apocalypse would play out when you have islands, an island chain that is 1,200 miles from anything. I mean, it's seriously, it's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. But boy, this was very eye-opening as to what it would be like if society began to just fall apart. And not just fall apart, but these islands, everything has to come into them by ship or by air. When air travel is all shut down, then you're not going to get goods and services into, your community. So if it's not grown or raised or manufactured on the island, you're not going to get it. And so it's interesting to see how this girl and her dad are forced to try and just take care of themselves, just get out of the situation that they're in and get back home. And that was also interesting in that they have to island hop to get back home, because Oahu is north of Maui and then Maui is north of the Big Island. So they make their way back home, and obviously they're having to, when you island hop, you have to cross water. They have to do some unsavory things. They are caught in some bad situations. They are desperate to get home, and it's just a great story that incorporates a lot of Hawaiian legend and mythology and belief, and I just thought it was very refreshing. I really liked it. The sequel kind of picks up where the first book left off, and there are some supernatural things that are going on with regard to why the EMP went off, and so those are brought out. Now the second book, while it's entertaining, the premise as to why everything happened, I don't know that it was terribly believable. It kind of descends into urban fantasy kind of territory, which I thought was kind of sad because the first book was so apocalyptic and all about survival, and I really liked that. But the second book is very good, and it's brutal. I mean, people die in bad ways, and they're very bad people, and so it was just really good. I was surprised. I had not heard raving about this series, and I was very pleasantly surprised. So I gave each of those books 4 stars. Riders by Veronica Rossi is narrated by Dan Bittner. Dan Bittner raised this book up at least 1 star for me, and possibly more than that, because he's so talented as a narrator. He just takes what's happening in the book and pulls it into the real world, like the world I'm in right now, so that it sounds like I'm in that world. It's so immersive. He's good at all of the characters, but primarily the main character. He reminds me a lot of MacLeod in that their style of narration is very much the same. They take the main character and they really bring him to life, and that makes everything else come to life in the book. And so I loved that. The book kind of was okay. I don't know that it was wonderful. It's YA, and it's about a guy who is in basic training to become an Army Ranger, and he dies. And he wakes up alive and realizes he is one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and he is war. And so he meets a girl, and they have to go round up the other 3 horsemen of the apocalypse. And so this is very much of an urban fantasy, and I thought that Rossi brought in a little too much real life in terms of the urban fantasy part, because while she set it in the real world, this fantasy part of it, you know, with the Four Horsemen, interacted so much with the real world that it just didn't ring very true for me. So I had a little bit of a problem with that, but otherwise it's a great adventure story with good characters and exceptional narration, and I ended up giving that 4 stars. I also finished up The Raven Cycle by Maggie Stievfater with Blue Lily, Lily Blue, and then The Raven King. On audio, these are narrated by Will Patton expertly. At first, I didn't think I was going to like this series, but I gave it a second shot and I really enjoyed it. So these 2 books are just follow-ups to the first. The whole series is all about a king who has been buried, and it is rumored that if you find him, he will grant 1 wish for you. So it's all about this cast of characters and their diverse personalities, their supernatural abilities in some instances, and just how it all plays out. There are some wonderful characters that Maggie Stievfater has really given a rich personality to. They have depth, they are faceted, they were really enjoyable to read about, and I like the way she ended it up in The Raven King. I thought it had a very fitting ending, not too far-fetched, and very appropriate for the characters. So I gave each of these books 4 stars. There were several books that I talked about when I wrapped up my BookTubeAthon experience in July, and so I will tell you what those were, but I will refer you to that video to let you know what I thought about them. They were World War Z by Max Brooks, which I DNF'd or really put aside for later. The Beginning of Everything by Robin Schneider, which is narrated on audio by Dan John Miller. By the way, World War Z is narrated by an entire cast. The Beginning of Everything I DNF'd because I just couldn't get into it. Ivory and Bone by Julia Eschbaugh was narrated by Michael Curran Dorsano. I gave it 2 stars. The Next Always is book 1 in the In Boonesbury series by Nora Roberts, and it's narrated by MacLeod Andrews, which was why I picked it up and ended up giving it 4 stars. The Museum of Extraordinary Things by Alice Hoffman is narrated from 3 points of view by Judith Light, Grace Gummer, and Zach Appleman. I ended up giving it 4 stars. The Beauty of Darkness is book 3 in the Remnant Chronicles by Mary E. Pearson, and that's YA fantasy narrated by Emily Rankin, Ryan Gazelle, Kirby Hayborn, Kim My Guest, and Anne-Marie Lee, and I gave it 4 stars. Morrigan is a novella that goes along with that series, The Remnant Chronicles by Mary E. Pearson. It's narrated from 2 points of view by Julia Whalen and MacLeod Andrews. We all know how I feel about MacLeod Andrews. Julia Whalen in this one was very good. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the history from this novella that it gave to the series. It really kind of just gave you some backstory, and it went right along, and actually it helped me to understand a few of the things in the final book that made a lot more sense. So I ended up giving that 4 stars. The Horse and His Boy by C.S. Lewis was narrated on audio by Alex Jennings. I loved it, gave it 5 stars. And Dark Matter by Blake Crouch was fantastic. It's narrated by John Lindstrom, an amazing book, 5 stars. And lastly, I picked up book 5 in the Pillars of Reality series by Jack Campbell. That is The Servants of the Storm. It's narrated on audio by MacLeod Andrews, and I want to do a full review of all 6 books in that series, and I'm listening to them again, and so I will do a review on the whole series and tell you all about it then. It is fantasy, YA, incredible. I love this series, all about magic and mechanics, so steampunk. So that was all the non-romance stuff that I read in July, and if you've read any of these books and have an opinion on them, please share it, because you know I always want to know. Let's talk about all that in comments, and that is it for now for me. I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.